This is a true story, told by the person involved. For 18 years, I lived steeped in my family's love, yet always shadowed by a terrifying truth I never knew existed. This isn't just my story. It's a story about secrets, about truth laid bare, and about finding yourself in the middle of a city that never sleeps. Get ready, because this is going to be an emotional ride you won't want to miss. Crazy, right? A regular New York girl like me, with a family secret I didn't even know was a thing, until a middle-of-the-night phone call changed everything. Do you ever feel like your whole life's been a play you didn't even know you were in? Imagine you're living the most regular New York life, then a late-night phone call changes everything. Sounds familiar, right? But trust me, this isn't what you think it is. I'm Riley, and if you'd asked me to define my life before that night, I'd say it was pretty normal. No, not boring normal. The kind of steady, comfortable normal you get here in Brooklyn. A decent job, a small but cozy apartment, and the best mom in the world. Oh, speaking of mom, my mom's Karen. She has this thing, a family joke we call her religion. She goes to bed at exactly 10 p.m. Never earlier, never later. Then one night, I was sitting around rewatching some old movies when my phone lit up. 10:30 p.m. The caller ID flashed. Mom Karen. My heart started pounding, this weird sense of dread creeping up on me. I immediately jumped to the worst conclusions. Was someone in the hospital? My grandparents or my dad David, was something wrong with them? Or worse? I took a deep breath and answered. Hi, honey. Are you alone right now? Her voice on the phone was completely different. Not the warm, familiar tone I heard every day. It was shaky, full of this strange edge that sent a shiver down my spine. I'd never heard my mom sound like that before. Yeah, I'm alone. Chloe, my roommate, is visiting her boyfriend out of town. I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. But inside, 1,000 questions were screaming. This middle-of-the-night call, this strange tone. This was the beginning of a secret I never saw coming. When Mom told me to sit down and started talking about Aunt Sarah, someone I'd never met, I knew this wasn't going to be a typical Christmas story. Turns out, my family's past was more complicated than the New York subway system. I nodded, trying to hide the rising anxiety. Yeah, Chloe's out with her boyfriend. My mom, Karen, took a deep breath. I could hear the tremor in it, and I swear to God, my whole life flashed before my eyes. A dozen worst-case scenarios zipped through my head. Mom sick? Dad David sick? Or, God forbid, my parents divorcing after 35 years of happy marriage that everyone admired? My parents were always such a stable couple. People used to joke about it, so that thought was truly insane. Sit down, Riley, Mom said, her voice softer than I expected. I immediately grabbed the duvet from the sofa, curling myself into it. I felt like a 6-year-old again, waiting to be punished for some unknown transgression. Mom started the story, and it had nothing to do with any of the terrible things I just imagined. She started talking about Sarah. Sarah is my sister, Mom said slowly. You know, the name we rarely mention. I nodded. Aunt Sarah. Someone I'd never actually met. Or rather, never had met. She lived in another state, clear across the country. All I knew was that Mom and Aunt Sarah had a huge fight before I was born. Growing up, Sarah was just a name that occasionally surfaced, usually when my mom had too much wine at Christmas and stared at old photos. Dad David was always quick to change the subject, and we all had this unspoken understanding that whatever happened between them was too painful to talk about. Karen and Sarah were really close when they were kids, Mom continued, her eyes distant. They shared a room, braided each other's hair, exchanged letters about cute boys. Just typical sister stuff. Then Mom's voice dropped. But it seems when they were in their early 20s, Sarah started dating this guy Mark. She paused for a moment, as if searching for the right words. Mark was bad news, Riley. He completely changed Sarah after she met him. How did she change? I asked, my curiosity now outweighing my initial fear. She stopped calling, missed family gatherings, and when she did come home, she'd have huge fights with Grandma and Grandpa, Mom recounted. Things just got worse and worse, and eventually Sarah disappeared for about 6 months. No calls, no letters. This was the 82nd, Riley. No cell phones, no social media like now. At the time, I was still fuzzy, thinking to myself, why is Mom calling me in the middle of the night just to rehash some old family drama that's been buried for years? But I could tell from her voice that this story was leading to something big. A secret deeper than anything I could imagine. When Mom told me Sarah showed up at her apartment, pregnant and sobbing, I was shocked. But that wasn't even the most shocking part. The next part, it flipped my entire world upside down. My mom paused for a moment, as if she was gathering all her courage. I was still trying to process the story about Aunt Sarah, about Mark, and her mysterious disappearance. I thought, maybe this is it. But then Mom started again. Then one night, Mom recounted, her voice dropping to a near whisper. Like a confession. Sarah showed up at my apartment. She was sobbing. And she was pregnant. I listened, stunned. Pregnant? From someone who disappeared without a trace, now returning with a baby bump? Mark had left, Mom continued, and Sarah was desperate. I took her in, helped her through the pregnancy, and was even in the delivery room when Sarah gave birth to a baby girl. A baby girl. Even now I was still confused why I was hearing this in the middle of the night, but I just let Mom keep talking. After the baby was born, Sarah struggled a lot, Mom said, her voice full of sympathy mixed with exhaustion. Like couldn't get out of bed to feed the baby. Sarah was so tired and panicked. I pictured my mom, Karen, working full-time, taking care of a newborn, and trying to help her sister recover. She must have been exhausted. After 3 months, Mom continued, Sarah seemed to recover overnight. She told me she found a great job opportunity in California and would take the baby to start a new life. A fleeting sense of relief, then a wave of suspicion washed over me. Things seemed too easy. I helped Sarah pack her things, bought her bus tickets, and gave her all the money I could save, Mom recounted, her voice heavy. The night before Sarah was supposed to leave, I came home from work and found a note on the kitchen table. Sarah had left and abandoned her own small child. Mom stopped, and I felt my heart pounding so hard it wanted to jump out of my chest. This was it, the moment I knew everything would change. The note simply read, I can't do this. She deserves better. Please forgive me and take care of her for me. I was numb on the sofa. At that moment, I could feel where this story was going, but my mind just couldn't connect the dots. Everything was spinning. I panicked, Mom said, her voice choked. I called the police, but legally, Sarah hadn't done anything wrong by abandoning her own child. I was listed as a relative, so I became the baby's legal guardian while they searched for Sarah. Weeks passed, then months passed with no news from Sarah. And as the days went by, I fell in love with that little girl. At this point, I started shaking. I remember dropping my phone and fumbling to pick it up. I knew what Mom was about to say, but I couldn't believe it. No way. My love, Mom whispered, her voice breaking. That baby was you. Sarah is your birth mother. My mom is actually your aunt. I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. The woman I'd called Mom all these years, the one who'd raised me, loved me, was actually my aunt. And the mysterious aunt I'd never met was my birth mother, and she'd abandoned me. Mom, I don't even know what to call you anymore. Mom started crying, saying she'd wanted to tell me for years, but never found the right time. She said Sarah had contacted her last week, asking if they could reconnect after all these years, and Mom felt I deserved to know the truth before that happened. I hung up without saying goodbye. My entire world had just collapsed. That phone call ended in silence, but the chaos in my head was just beginning. For 3 straight days, I lived like a zombie, a ghost in this New York City. How do you deal with the fact that your whole life was a play full of lies? I hung up without a word. My hands were still trembling, and I couldn't breathe. The woman I'd called Mom my whole life, who taught me how to read, how to ride a bike, who comforted me every time I stumbled, she was actually my aunt. And the mysterious woman I was never allowed to mention, Sarah, was my birth mother. And she abandoned me. Mom, I thought to myself, I don't even know what to call you anymore. From the other end of the line, I could still hear Mom Karen sobbing, saying she'd wanted to tell me for years, but never found the right time. Aunt Sarah had contacted her last week, asking if they could reconnect, and Mom felt I deserved to know the truth before that happened. I just wanted to scream. For days afterward, I was a zombie. I went out, did my usual things, went to work, shopped at the grocery store, but my mind just kept replaying every word of that phone call. Standing in line at the grocery store, I suddenly remembered Mom's shaky, strange voice, and my chest would tighten again. I kept thinking I should call her back, or at least text. But every time I picked up the phone, I got angry. Seriously angry. I'm usually a straight shooter, but this was different. Why now? I asked myself. Why me? Why not just bury this forever if it's been so long? And then I'd think, what else has Mom lied about? It was insane. I only slept 2 hours a night, tops. Every morning I woke up with a bitter taste in my mouth, knowing I was about to cry again. I just kept pacing around the apartment, going into the kitchen, making coffee, staring at the fridge like it was going to explain something to me. I think I texted Chloe at some point, something like, hope you're having fun, don't worry about me or the cat. Everything's fine. Yeah, a terrible lie. Sunday night, Chloe came home from her boyfriend's place. As soon as she walked in, she asked, are you okay? I just said, yeah, I'm fine. Because what else was there to say? But I guess I wasn't hiding it well, because she just kept staring at me while I was unpacking, then finally plopped down on the sofa next to me, still in her shoes, and said, all right, spill it. Because you look like you just found out your cat's a tiger or something. Chloe's not subtle. I don't know why, but I just blurted it all out, not even bothering to make sense of it. Just all about how Mom Karen wasn't my real mom, and how she was actually my aunt, and Sarah was my relative, and I was basically a family secret. Chloe just sat there and let me talk. She didn't do that thing where people immediately jump in with advice, which I really appreciated. She just asked simple questions. The kind you'd ask if your best friend told you something crazy. How do you know it's true? Are you going to meet Sarah? Do you want to? Did your mom ever mention anything else weird? Then she asked if I wanted her to stay home for a few days, which was sweet, but I said no. I didn't want her to change her plans for me. I just wanted things to go my way or go back, or fast forward, just not be here. I felt exhausted. When I texted Mom, "We need to talk," my heart felt like it was going to jump out of my chest. Going to her house felt like walking into a courtroom, and I didn't know if I was the defendant or the judge. Monday morning, I finally couldn't take it anymore. After days of living in this tangled mess of truth and unanswered questions, I knew I had to do something. I pulled out my phone. Should I call her mom or aunt? I wondered. Everything felt so weird now. I just texted a short message. "We need to talk." Mom Karen replied immediately, like she'd been waiting for this text. She asked if I could come over after dinner. I almost said no, because I was scared. Scared to confront, scared of what I'd hear, scared of what I'd feel. But I knew if I didn't get answers, I'd just obsess forever. So, I agreed. The rest of the day was a blur. I tried not to think about it, but every time my phone rang, I jumped. I kept thinking about what I'd say, what I'd ask. Around 8 p.m., I drove to Mom's house. I sat in the car for about 5 minutes, staring at the front door, wondering if I'd feel different. I didn't feel different at all, really. But the house seemed smaller, like everything inside was now just a prop in a play I'd just discovered I was the main character in. Mom opened the door and immediately started making small talk, asking if I wanted tea, if I'd eaten, all that familiar stuff. I cut her off. "Can we just sit down?" I could see Mom was nervous. Her hands trembled slightly as she poured me water, and she kept glancing at me like I was about to explode. I started with the most obvious thing. Why tell me now? Why not just keep it buried? Mom looked so tired, honestly, like she'd aged 10 years since last week. "I've wanted to tell you for years, Riley," she said, her voice weak. "But every time I tried, I got scared. Scared you'd hate me. Scared you'd leave. And I just kept putting it off." She sighed heavily. Then Sarah contacted me again. I panicked. "I thought if you found out from anyone else, it would be worse." "I don't know if that's true," I interrupted, "but it's still bad, Mom." I kept pushing. I wanted the details. What was so bad about Mark? Why did Sarah leave me? Was she on drugs or something? My mom, well, I'm still going to call her Mom because that's how it feels, hesitated slightly. Then she started talking about Mark. Mark was the isolating type. He convinced Sarah that her parents hated her, that no one cared about her, that she was an outcast and he was the only one who understood. I tried to warn Sarah, but things just got worse from there. And eventually Mom and Dad almost gave up trying to reach out and talk sense into her. Then when Sarah got pregnant, Mark abandoned her. And Sarah just crumbled. Mom continued. Not drugs, but depression. Real, scary depression. And no one in the family really knew how to help because no one talked about mental health back then. She said it like it was an excuse, but I just listened. But what hurt me the most was when she said, "Riley, Sarah was always jealous of me." She said it softly, as if she didn't want to admit it. Then she told me about the little things. Sarah copying Mom's clothes, her handwriting, even how she did her hair. Apparently Grandma Eleanor, I guess, always compared them. She told Sarah she was more like the perfect man than her sister. "So when I took you in," Mom continued, "Sarah saw it as her failure again, like she was failing at life and I was automatically winning. So, apparently, my whole life was like the final round in their sisterly competition. That made me so angry. I didn't even know how to respond. Did you ever think about telling me when I was little?" I asked. Mom just stared at her hands and said over and over again. But every time I chickened out. At that point, I almost lost it. No, I didn't scream, but I told her, my voice controlled. "It feels like my whole life has been a lie, Mom. Like I was just a prop in your and Aunt Sarah's play." I looked her straight in the eye. "Do you understand how messed up this is? You made a choice for me, forever, and now I don't even know who I am." Mom started crying again, but I just sat there. A few minutes later, she wiped her face and told me Sarah wanted to see me. She said she'd emailed Sarah and asked if she could get in touch. And Sarah had written back a long letter. Mom said she hadn't read it, just forwarded it to me. She said she thought it should come directly from me. I checked my phone for the email and saw it there. The subject line was just for Mom. I didn't open it, I just stared at it, then put my phone face down. I asked Mom what she wanted me to do, and she said she honestly didn't know. She said she'd support whatever I decided, but she hoped I'd at least read the letter because Sarah had been carrying around guilt for years. I didn't know about that, but I also felt like that was her problem, not mine. I left soon after. Mom tried to hug me, but I pulled back, and her arms dropped. I could see I'd hurt her, but I was hurting too. A lot. I got back to my apartment, and Chloe was in the kitchen. She just handed me a bowl without asking any questions. That's why I love her. We ate ramen in silence, just scrolling on our phones, and for those few minutes, everything almost felt normal again. The next morning, I woke up to about 6 texts from Mom Karen, just checking in, asking if I was okay, saying she loved me. I spent the whole day at the park, just walking for hours, listening to random playlists, and trying not to think. At one point, I saw a mom holding a little girl, and I almost laughed because it felt so fake, like, how can people just keep going like nothing happened? Chloe kept asking if I'd read Sarah's email, and I kept saying no. But finally, after 3 days, I caved. I waited until Chloe was out, poured myself a big cup of tea, sat down on the floor with my laptop, and opened it. The letter was long and clumsy. Sarah wrote about how sorry she was, how she wished things were different, how she thought giving me up was the right thing to do, how scared she was of being her own mother. She mentioned occasionally seeing my mom raising me from afar, which gave me a bit of the creeps. Like, what does that even mean? Was she stalking me or just checking in on the family? She said she was in therapy, that she'd spent years rebuilding her life, and that she wanted to meet me if I wanted to, but would understand if I didn't. But what really bugged me was the "I hope you can forgive me" line. She never clearly explained why she left. Like, she talked about being scared, about Mark being bad. But she never said, "I left for this specific reason." Just vague stuff about not being ready, feeling lost, being overwhelmed. And then she ended with, "I love you in my own way." What does that even mean? In my own way. Like, passively from a distance. I told Chloe everything, and she just nodded and said, "Yeah, that's a lot." She asked if I wanted to reply, and honestly, I didn't know. Part of me wanted to send back a whole essay about how she couldn't just abandon me, now that I was grown, and expect me to be grateful. Another part of me just wanted to shut her down and move on. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I needed to meet her, at least, not for her, but for me. I just needed answers. I needed to see her face, hear her voice, ask her all the things no one else could answer. So, I sent a short reply. "I got your letter. I have questions. I'll meet you, but I'm not promising anything." She replied within an hour, which freaked me out a little because I didn't expect her to be so ready. She suggested we meet at a downtown coffee shop, midday, in a public place, just us. I agreed, but I told her I wouldn't be coming alone. Chloe offered to sit nearby, and I said yes. I told Mom Karen I was going to meet Sarah. Mom freaked out, not screaming, but clearly upset. She kept asking, "Are you sure? You don't have to do this. She's not who you think she is." She started rambling about how Sarah always made a spectacle of herself, about how she twisted the story, about how she still wasn't stable. I snapped. "Mom," I said, my voice sharp, "I'm not a kid, I can handle myself, and I need to do this for me, not anyone else." Mom went silent, then said, "Just promise me you'll be careful." "Fine," I said, but I knew she didn't believe me. So now I know nothing. I'm sitting here with my phone vibrating. Everyone's acting like I'm walking into a minefield. And maybe I am, but I can't not know. I can't live my whole life with this question hanging over my head. Chloe keeps saying she's proud of me for facing it. But honestly, I just feel tired. So damn tired. Finally, the day came to meet Sarah. It felt like I was walking into a secret date, but instead of love, I was searching for the missing pieces of my life. The meeting is tomorrow. I don't know what I'm going to say. I don't know what Sarah will look like or if I'll recognize myself in her. I keep thinking about all those family photos that never had her in them. All those holidays where I wondered about the empty chair. And now I'm about to sit in it, or at least see who was supposed to be there. So yeah, I'm here, now. I'll update when it's over, but for now, wish me luck. The meeting with Sarah at the coffee shop was, I have to say, more tense than I expected. Chloe sat at a table not too far away, glancing over every now and then, which eased my nerves a bit. Sarah looked a little older than Mom Karen, and there was a deep weariness etched in her eyes. We talked for about an hour and a half. She kept apologizing, saying how scared she was, how she wasn't strong enough to be a mother. I asked her about Mark, about the years she disappeared. Sarah said Mark was manipulative, gradually convincing her that no one loved her but him. When he left, she completely crumbled. "I don't understand," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You said you loved me. So why did you leave me? Why didn't you try?" Sarah looked at me, her eyes welling up. "I thought you'd have a better life with Karen," she said. "I was a mess. I couldn't even take care of myself, let alone a newborn. I thought it was best for you." Hearing her say Mom and you felt so foreign. But what bothered me most wasn't the story she told, but the gaps in it. Everything was vague. I didn't feel like there was a clear explanation for why she left. It was as if she was trying to protect herself, or hide something. When the meeting ended, Sarah reached out, as if to touch me, but I pulled back. I said, "I need time to think about all of this." She just nodded, her face disappointed. After meeting Sarah, I thought I had enough answers. But no, that glimpse into her past only opened up new doubts. Now, I wasn't just learning about my family, but about myself. Back home, Chloe was waiting. "How did it go?" she asked immediately. I recounted everything, every single detail. She kept saying, "I love you." "I'm sorry," I told Chloe, my voice full of exasperation. "But I still feel like something's off. Like there's a part of the story she doesn't want to tell. Maybe she's just trying to protect herself," Chloe said, always trying to see things objectively. "Or there are things she doesn't want to revisit." "But those things involve me," I almost yelled. "She's my birth mother. I have a right to know." I started digging. I scrolled online, looking up postpartum depression, Stockholm syndrome, because what Sarah said about Mark sounded like manipulation. I also searched for information about adoption in New York in the 82nd, but the more I searched, the more I felt like something was missing. One night, I was looking through old photos Mom Karen had given me when I was little. Pictures of Mom Karen and Aunt Sarah when they were young, with Grandma Eleanor and Grandpa Richard. In every photo, Sarah always looked at Mom Karen with a strange expression. Not hatred, but a kind of longing. An obsession. And then I noticed something. In a photo of Sarah when she was a teenager, she was wearing a necklace with a butterfly pendant. I remembered. It was the same necklace I'd seen in Mom Karen's old jewelry box, but Mom said it was broken and couldn't be worn. And then, a crazy thought flashed through my mind, so crazy I had to stand up. If Sarah was so obsessively jealous of Karen, could it be? "No way," I muttered to myself. But I couldn't shake the thought. There was a missing piece. A deeper secret that I had to find out for myself. Dinner at Grandma and Grandpa's house. Everyone was there. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. And then, I decided it was time to end this family drama. New York might be loud, but this dining room was louder than Times Square. After the meeting with Sarah, I got a call from Grandma Eleanor. "If you can, come for dinner tonight, Riley. We need to talk." Her voice sounded normal, but I knew. Nothing was normal anymore. I agreed. When I arrived, everyone was already there. My mom, Karen, Aunt Sarah, Grandma Eleanor, Grandpa Richard, and even my cousin Jason, who kept telling awkward jokes about family gatherings. The tension in the dining room was terrible. It was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Grandma still tried to act normal, passing dishes and asking about the weather, but no one ate. Aunt Sarah barely spoke, just sat staring at her plate. Mom Karen kept glaring at her, and Grandpa Richard just sat there, staring. The meal passed in heavy silence, only occasionally broken by the clinking of silverware or Jason trying to tell some stale joke. Finally, Grandma Eleanor, with a tired and frustrated look on her face, slammed her fork onto her plate and was forced to speak. "We need to talk, Sarah, Karen," she said, her voice slightly trembling, like a mother who had reached her breaking point with her children. "We can't keep pretending nothing happened anymore. Riley deserves to know the truth, and everything needs to be cleared up." Immediately, my mom Karen interjected, her voice full of anger. "She has no right to show up now. She gave up her chance. She's just trying to cause trouble." Aunt Sarah looked up, her eyes red. "I was pushed out. No one wanted me there. I was just doing what everyone expected." They argued back and forth, accusations and excuses pouring out. I sat there, feeling like I was watching a play where I was the center of attention. I couldn't take it anymore. I suddenly stood up, my chair falling back and hitting the floor with a jarring crash. All eyes turned to me. "Enough!" I almost screamed. "This isn't about you two anymore. This is about me!" I looked each of them straight in the eye one by one. "I'm the one who's been lied to my whole life." I continued, my voice trembling but firm, not allowing anyone to interrupt. Tears started to stream down my face, but I didn't care. I don't want to take sides. I'm not a pawn in your game. And if you two want to be in my life, you need to sort out your own issues without using me as an excuse. Grow up. After my outburst, a long, eerie silence filled the room. No one said a word. They just sat there, staring at their food or avoiding my gaze, their faces a mixture of shock and perhaps shame. I felt a heavy weight in my chest, but at the same time, a huge burden had been lifted. Finally, I had said what I needed to say. I had cut the invisible string that I hadn't known existed, the string that had pulled at me my entire life. Even though I didn't get a hug after dinner that night, I got something more precious. The truth and freedom. Life in New York was still the same, but I was different. Grandma Eleanor was the first to break the eerie silence, her voice tired and remorseful, sounding like the sigh of a whole generation that had carried the burden of secrets. "I'm sorry, Riley," she said softly, looking at me with tear-filled eyes. "I'm sorry we all let you down in so many ways. We should have told you a long time ago. We thought we were protecting you, but in the end, we only hurt you." Grandpa Richard, who had been silent throughout the meal, just nodded slightly, his old eyes still fixed on his plate, but I could see a helplessness, a deep sadness in his gaze. My mom Karen started crying again, tears streaming down her cheeks, no longer tears of anger or self-defense, but of pain and perhaps regret. And Aunt Sarah just looked away, avoiding everyone's gaze, her shoulders trembling slightly. as if she couldn't bear the weight of this moment, of the truth being laid bare. I didn't say another word. I didn't need any more empty apologies or justifications. I just grabbed my bag, stood up from the chair that had witnessed too much tension, and walked straight out the door. I didn't eat dessert and I didn't say goodbye to anyone. I just wanted to leave that room, leave that heavy atmosphere, leave those faces that now felt both familiar and strangely distant. No hugs were exchanged, no words of comfort, no pleas to stay. Perhaps that was the best way for all of us at that moment. No more little lies to soothe things over. Now I'm back in my apartment in Brooklyn. I sit down on my familiar sofa, looking out the window, where the city lights still blaze, the skyscrapers glittering as if nothing has changed. I don't really feel better immediately. The pain is still there, a brand new scar on my soul. But I feel clearer. A curtain has been pulled back, and although the light is somewhat blinding, I feel like I can see more clearly. At least I finally said what I needed to say, the words that had been suppressed my whole life, the questions that had relentlessly tormented me. I stood up for myself. Not for Mom Karen, not for Aunt Sarah, but for Riley. I don't know if I'll ever truly forgive both of them, or even if I want to. That process will take time, a lot of time, and may never fully heal. But I know one thing for sure. I won't let them continue to use me to fight their old battles anymore. I won't be a pawn in anyone's game. My life, my story, will be written by me. I've taken back control, and that's a more powerful feeling than any hug. I no longer live in the shadow of a buried secret. And although the road ahead is full of challenges, I believe I will overcome them. New York teaches me a lot of things, but the biggest lesson I learned from this story? Never be afraid to seek your own truth, no matter how difficult it may be. After that explosive night at Grandma and Grandpa's house, my life in New York continued. You know, this city never sleeps and it doesn't wait for anyone. Yellow cabs still whiz by on the streets, the Times Square billboards still flash wildly, and life rushes on as usual. But I was different. I still went to work, still drank coffee at my usual corner spot, still listened to my favorite music as I walked through Brooklyn Park. However, inside me, a big change had taken place. Now, as things have settled down a bit, I'm starting to look back at the whole story and realize the profound lessons it brought. It seems that only by going through such big shocks can people truly understand many things about themselves and about life. These are the lessons I've learned from this crazy story. Things that perhaps only in a city as dynamic and constantly moving as New York could I truly comprehend and grow. No matter how difficult or painful, the truth will eventually be revealed. I once wished Mom Karen would bury this secret forever, thinking that not knowing would be better. I once thought that false peace was happiness. But now I understand that you can't run forever. It just hovers there, like a dark cloud waiting to rain, waiting for the right moment to burst. And when it bursts, you have no choice but to face it, no matter how stunning or painful it is. Running away only exhausts you, while the truth remains there, waiting. I painfully realized that I am not anyone's pawn. I lived my whole life without knowing I was part of a play staged by Mom Karen and Aunt Sarah, a play where I was the main character without knowing anything about the script. But now, I am determined not to let others define me or drag me into their battles anymore. I have the right to discover myself, to explore my origins, and to make my own decisions about who will be in my life. This is my life, and I am the only one who can write its story. I will not let anyone else hold the pen and draw my destiny anymore. Sometimes, speaking your true feelings, even if it causes initial discomfort or breakage, is the only way for things to become clear and for you to move forward. I was afraid to confront Mom Karen, then Aunt Sarah, and finally the whole family. I was afraid of hurting them, afraid of making things worse. But my speaking up, my clearly expressing my emotions, freed me from the burden of silence. It didn't immediately make things easy or heal all the cracks, but it put an end to the concealment. It created a new beginning, however thorny. Life and family relationships are not always as simple as what we see in movies or fairy tales. Everyone has their pains, their secrets, and their own reasons for their actions. Mom Karen hid the truth out of fear and love for me. Aunt Sarah left because she was too overwhelmed and couldn't face the responsibility. I don't have to forgive them immediately, or even forgive them completely. But I need to learn to understand and accept that things are complicated, and people are not always perfect. We cannot change the past, but we can learn to live with it and find ways to heal our wounds. In the darkest days, when I felt like the whole world was turning its back on me, Chloe was there. She listened to me without judgment, was there for me when I needed her most without me having to say it. She didn't give cliché advice or try to fix everything. She was simply there, a solid anchor in the storm. That helped me realize that, no matter how complicated family can be, having a friend who truly cares and supports you is invaluable. Don't be afraid to share your feelings with people you trust. You don't have to face everything alone. I'm still on this journey. The family chat group is exploding with angry messages and half-baked explanations. Everyone's choosing sides. Grandma Eleanor keeps sending loving words as a helpless way to heal. And Grandpa Richard remains eerily silent. And me, I'm just here, in my apartment, trying to find a clean spoon in this mess and trying to put the pieces of my life back together. If you've read or listened this far, thank you. And if you have any advice, I'd be happy to take it because honestly, I don't know what I'm doing next. The next steps are not clear. But this time, I feel like it's really up to me. I've gotten my voice back, and that's all I need to move forward. New York taught me a lot of things. But the biggest lesson I learned from this story? Never be afraid to seek your own truth, no matter how difficult it may be.